Week 14 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I look to start. This week, the first guy, Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. So Sanders, he's in the high-powered offense, obviously, with the Dolphins. One of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league. A lot of speed, a lot of points put on the board. And Sanders, the last 3 weeks now, he's had double-digit fantasy points in every game. Week 11 versus the Raiders, 11. Week 12 at the Jets, 12. Week 13 at the Commanders, 10. And this week here, Week 14, a great matchup versus the Tennessee Titans. I give up the 5th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So right now, the second and 2 Monday night games, Jason Sanders kicking well. And obviously to play in a stadium like Miami where the weather's usually nice and good conditions and a great matchup, he's an easy start. This week, the next start, Evan McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, Evan McPherson and this whole Bengal team as a whole is taking a hit fantasy football purposes. Obviously, with Joe Burrow out for the season, but Evan McPherson still has one of the best boots in the league. This team's going to be settling for more field goals where they're not punching in the ball into the end zone as often. And it's a great matchup, Week 14 versus the Indianapolis Colts. They give up the most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So Evan McPherson, he's hovering around that 5-10 fantasy point range weekly. Like I said, he's got a big boot. And with a great matchup versus a Colt defense that gives up tons of points in general and the most to kickers on the year, Evan McPherson, once again, as a start. Even if the numbers might take a little bit of a hit, he's going to go out there and get opportunities. Next start's Daniel Carlson, a Las Vegas Raiders. So Daniel Carlson, once again, an underrated kicker this season, and a guy got dropped in a lot of fantasy leagues after going on bye. But this Raider team's had a lot of trouble over the last month of the season finding the end zone and punching it in. And Carlson, the last month, Week 9 versus the Giants, 14. Week 10 versus the Jets, 14. Week 11 in Miami, 8. And Week 12 versus Kansas City, 5. And now coming off the bye, a good matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings that give up the 6th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So this Viking team, I know their defense is bend but don't break at times, but kickers, they've had their way, and now we're into a game once again at home for Daniel Carlson and the Raiders, where he's been a better kicker at home than he's been on the road. He's a kicker I would start this week. The next kicker is staying in the same division, Cameron Dicker, Los Angeles Chargers. Cameron Dicker, he's been perfect this season, not missing any field goals. And right now, he's been one of the better kickers in the league in terms of percentage and making his opportunities. I know the last few weeks, the numbers have dropped off a little bit, and this offense really hasn't been scoring great, believe it or not, with all these weapons, with Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. But this week, a good matchup versus the Denver Broncos, a bend but don't break type of defense. They give up the 10th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. In the last few weeks, like I said, the numbers have dropped off for Dicker. Week 11 at Green Bay, 8. Week 12 versus Baltimore, 4. And Week 13 at New England, 6. But as long as the opportunities coming and this offense starts putting up more points, which I think they will after 2 bad performances, only putting up 10 points in Week 12 and Week 13, 6 at New England. I think this offense breaks out, puts some points and more opportunities to be there for Dicker this week. And the 5th and final kicker I look to start is Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Falcons. So Younghoe Koo, it's been a great season once again. He's the most accurate kicker in terms of percentage in NFL history. And this week here, a matchup versus the Tampa Bay Bucks that we know their defense is bend but don't break. And we also know Younghoe Koo is a better kicker at home than he is on the road playing indoors, which obviously always is a plus. So the last few games for Koo, Week 10 at Arizona, 5. Week 12 versus New Orleans, 6. And Week 13 in a rainy game at the New York Jets. He did have 8 fantasy points. So this week versus Tampa Bay, the opportunities will be there. Possibly a game where both teams are going to go up and down the field and have to settle for field goals. That's just the type of offenses they are. And Younghoe Koo way better at home than he's been on the road this season. So that's a few kickers I look to start here for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.